Lights.
Camera.
Watch.
Oppenheimer, written and directed by Christopher Nolan, based on the 2005 biography American Prometheus, starring Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr. Now, I really want to start off this conversation with the forbidden fruit.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, in the beginning of the story, we get Oppenheimer, like, pissed off at his professor, and he poisons his professor's apple.
Yes.
He has this horrible moment at night. He can't sleep. He wakes up. He rushes there. And, like, the professor that he looks up to, the professor that he wanted to go towards and watch the lecture for,
yes,
is right there by that apple. He's holding it, and he's freaking out. And at that moment, that professor says, you can't leave the stone without you can't remove the stone without the snake being revealed. So Oppie takes that apple, throws it away. I'm getting the forbidden fruit vibes from the Bible or like the Old Testament. Forgive me what it is. Because at that moment, I'm just thinking to my head that this guy is basically has the forbidden fruit.
Yep.
That he's going to create this bomb. And he intended it originally to kill his professor that he hated or was pissed off at. But when he comes there, realizes that the professor he loves is actually holding it, that he could possibly eat it.
Yeah.
So he's in this weird dilemma that whatever he created and did is going to potentially poison somebody that he was looking up to and admired, but he had to react and stop and throw away that apple. Now, I don't know if there was anything in Christopher Nolan's mind. Or
no, it's 100% set up that way, in my opinion. I think there's a chosen decision that he made to start off with that particular scene, and I think that is exactly what he was trying to convey.
Yeah, I'm getting just Adam and Eve, the forbidden food. You get that apple, you bite it. The world is not the same. So, I mean, I didn't think about that until later on, and it just came to me. It's like, that's fucking brilliant.
I guess that happened, too. I looked that up, if that was true. He tried to poison... I guess Oppenheimer did a lot of things that were, like, pretty messed up.
I guess when you're really brilliant and really good at something, you get a lot of passes. Back in the day, it kind of like... I don't want to compare him, or I guess you can't compare it, but it's like if the institutions want to allow you, and whether it's institutions, government, politics, whatever, social, whatever it is, allows you, you can just get away with stuff.
Yeah.
If you're like that made man. But there comes a point where you cross the line.
They have a line about it in the movie. I don't know what it is directly, but they said, like, your brilliance is not a pass or something like that.
I don't know. I'm sure it's there. Yeah. I mean, that's clearly there's a case study in that. But what did you think of the pace of the movie?
I thought the first 2 hours rocked.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they zoomed. Mm-hmm. I thought the building of the team aspect of it, as well as the, like, are we going to make this happen? Are we going to blow up the world? I thought it was exhilarating. Mm-hmm. I thought the last hour dragged.
Okay.
But that's my one complaint about the pace.
I love the concept of the pace because it was really a race against the Nazis, against, like, Hitler and everything. And you feel it when they're communicating. It's like, I got to get this guy. I got to get this guy. And time
specifically when Matt Damon and him are like, oh, I can get it to you by September. And he's like, July.
Yeah.
He's like, August, July. Like, we have to do this now.
And that tells you when you can get brilliant people in a room together and you give the full resources of the United States government, they can solve a problem. And tragically, this is like creating a weapon. But it just always springs to me. It's like, yo, why can't you guys figure out other stuff, other issues in society, climate change, pollution, energy crisis? I'm sure you guys have fucking answers, but you don't need a war to bring this up. But I truly love the pace. I like that they switched over the second half of the movie because I didn't even see that coming.
Yeah, so the fact that Robert Downey Jr.'s character starts as, like, the narrator in the beginning, like, setting the scenes, telling you what's happening, and then it reveals later that he's actually the villain, blew my mind. I thought that was an incredible choice to start by that. I think the whole way that this movie is edited is the best part of it. I think it is a truly genius way that it was all put together. And I totally agree with you that was a plot twist.
Yeah, I don't think everybody knew what this movie was about. Like, it wasn't like, oh, Mission Impossible, you know, like Death Reckoning, you know, like there's gonna be stunts, whatever. Everybody knew it was gonna be kind of like a bio thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody anticipated kind of being this trial, this, or not. It's not even. You don't even get to an origin story, because a lot of people thought this was like a biography. Because whenever you do like an origin story, like you see the person at their childhood or at birth to death. You don't see that. You see this someone when he's actually kind of being created. Oppenheimer is being created throughout this entire pace, and at the same time he's also being not created, where he's like being destroyed and it's like having a rude awakening. And
instead of starting at the beginning of his life and going through everything, it starts as like, I guess you could say, 4 crucial parts of his life.
Correct.
And they're all mixing in between, so you don't really know what's happened when until the whole story's laid out in front of you.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of The Social Network.
Definitely The Social Network is
this movie like mirrors like kind of The Social Network. The structure of it is like a court case. I also see the Steve Jobs movies in it too, where it kind of like gives points. Michael Fassbender, is that his name?
Yeah, Fassbender.
Thank you. If you watch his story of Steve Jobs' things,
I've heard that one's way better. I've only seen the one with Ashton Kutcher, which is not very good.
Well, I mean, Ashton Kutcher really did look more like Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But in the Michael
Fassbender
movie, that movie has 3 critical points in his life. You know, the launch of this product, the launch of this, and throughout the entire chaos of each one of those things, all of these events is going on in the background, whether it's his divorce, his paternity test, like his relationships crumbling with this co-founder. I mean, you kind of see it in this movie too, which relationships are being built as well as the relationships are being destroyed. What did you think, aside from like the pace of the movie, the color to black and white? What did you think of that?
I thought it was incredible, because it's clear that the color is Oppenheimer's perspective. Like whenever we're in color, it's his mind, it's what's happening to him, and the black and white is RDJ. The movie also starts with 2 cuts of their faces.
Yes.
And fission and fusion.
Yes.
So it sets the tone of like, this is his world, this is his world.
Yes.
And the fact that Oppenheimer's is in color, I feel like just shows like the amount of possibilities that can happen with this, and the fact that RDJ's is in black and white is like, that's how he thinks is definitive. Either it's black or it's white. So I thought it was an incredible decision. Can I ask, before we go any further?
Yes.
You're a history major. How much did you know about this prior to seeing this film?
I knew. You know what the thing too is, you kind of know a lot of the big points.
Yeah.
You don't know the intricate details, and you don't know how much is real or not, or just like written dialogue. You know, I don't think these guys are throwing in those like funny lines here and there, you know, but that's made for cinema. But like,
so you haven't read American Prometheus or done a deep dive?
I'm sure you know what's going to be interesting is this. Probably that movie is. I mean, that book is probably going to become another bestseller again.
Oh, 1000%.
Because people are going to think. So this is my take.
I went home and I googled Robert Oppenheimer the second I watched this movie. So like, I'm sure everybody else did too.
Yeah, I agree. Because no one knew what like to anticipate from this movie, because you think Oppenheimer and like first thing people Google is like the creator of
Father of the atomic bomb. It's like, well, I got that.
Yeah, but this guy didn't. He didn't create that. He was like the Nick Fury. He brought the Avengers all together. He got this smart guy and this guy. But what I really thought about the black and white and the color differences, I thought when it was colorful, I thought the world had endless possibilities, millions of colors. But the moment the atomic bomb was created, I feel like the world becomes very black and white, where it's like it could end by a simple mistake, a president pushing a button, where before any of this was created, tons of possibilities, peace, and like you had all these movements going on at that time. But then afterwards, it's like, no, you're either a commie or you're basically a patriot for the United States.
Definitely.
And the world at that moment, when we go to black and white, it's basically the Iron Curtain and the United States, and then you begin like this really intense Cold War where both sides have a bomb, and if they push the button, it's over for everybody. I forget what the term is called when both sides can mutual destruction or something like that. Like if you push the button.
Sounds right to me. I'm not sure.
But we talked about the villain. Who do you think the villain of this movie is?
Oh, it's RDJ.
You think so?
100%. I mean, you can make the point that it's Oppenheimer because he created it, or it's whatever, but it's Robert Downey Jr.
Well, let's put it this way. What if it's like the United States military industrial complex, and let's say...
Oh, well, sure. I mean, that's a villain too. I mean...
you know, because there are people that when I watch this movie, it's like, okay, you're a piece of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of ego in both characters where they all think that they're kind of like gods. They're really important people. Whether it's Oppie in the past, where it's like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff until he has a rude awakening, with RDJ too, because he took things so personal for a stupid conversation that had nothing to do with him and tried to destroy this other person.
No, he took a personal vendetta against Oppenheimer and didn't care about anything else other than destroying his life personally.
Yeah, and I tell people a lot of time, ego will destroy you. Your ego will destroy. And I feel like he just took it so personally that he came as like a person that sold shoes and made it to become like the head of Princeton's, like the dean of Princeton, and then became potentially
was that what he was, the dean of Princeton before?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
But he was a humble shoe salesman. And what's interesting to me is these are two characters from a similar background. They're both Jewish men, but one, it seems to be they seem to both be trying to assimilate, while there's other characters of Jewish background which will say like they're like trying to preserve more of their heritage.
Well, there's a scene where
in the train? No.
Is it? Well, whenever he says his name the first time, he corrects him to make it like less Jewish. Was that on the train or was that at the Princeton campus?
Well, that was on the Princeton campus. Okay. But there was another part where Oppenheimer's sitting on the train, and his friend comes in with the glasses.
Yep.
I mean, they all kind of wear glasses.
My problem with this movie is I don't know any of these white men's names, but I know the actors who played him. Yes. So it's the guy from the Santa Claus who plays the lead elf. He comes in.
No, but in seriousness, like there's a scene where I guess they're both from like kind of New York, and he's like, "Oh, you don't speak Yiddish, or like you don't speak the dialogue and stuff." It's like, "No, we don't speak Yiddish."
Danish, I think,
or whatever it is on my side of the park. Anyhow, but
oh no, you're right, on the train. You're right.
But there are people that are villains. Like the moment I heard Casey Affleck's voice.
Oh my God, Casey Affleck is terrifying in this movie.
He's the devil.
He is horrifying in this movie. The second it cut to his face, I was like, oh my God, this is demented.
And you know he's really bad when Matt Damon's character, who's a full-on like general, he's like, "You were in a room with him?
Yeah.
Why did you even talk to him?" It's like, you know, that was some scary shit. If this like military man that's like built the Pentagon is scared of this motherfucker, because this fool is probably like a secret agent of the FBI, God knows, like assassinating people, locking up people that they assume are communists.
He has one scene, and it is truly the most horrifying scene in this movie.
Yes, but with all that's going on in the movie, there's a very interesting line that's said that I think Josh Hartnett's character says is, "Keep politics out of the lab."
Yeah. And
a lot of politics is very comparable to what's going on in our society today as much as it was back then. You have, you know, I think we both completely support the unionization of the Screen Actors Guilds or writers fighting for more equality and stuff like that.
Of course.
Same thing was going on at this time and era. You had people that were just interested in ideologies, like some communist ideologies, and people who were automatically being branded for this, and you couldn't talk about this. And in this movie, there's a lot of serious things that are going on that Nolan does not bring up. You know, there's a point where that's
clearly a choice, though.
Yes. Oppie says this line, I think, to Josh Hartnett. He's all like, "They're not hurting your people in the camps."
Yeah.
We forget to mention in the United States of Jim Crow, segregation, the Japanese internment camps where people were probably assaulted, murdered, lost property. I mean, we didn't go full Nazi, but I'm not saying like we're not as evil it is, but in this movie, they're keeping a lot of subjects out of like this, like, oh, epic, hey, we're gonna make this bomb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Honestly, I didn't think too much about it because in my mind, this was not like a movie about World War II. It wasn't a movie about the time. It was a movie about Robert Oppenheimer. Mm-hmm. It's more of a character study than like a wide range of like what is happening in this time. Mm-hmm. So honestly, I think the fact that it didn't throw a lot in that stuff was actually helpful to keeping the focus on what was going on with him. Mm-hmm. So honestly, I mean, to not mention your own country's horrifying things is always not great, but I don't think that was a negative for this film personally.
I think you had to make the movie successful.
Yeah.
You had to do these things, but I don't want it to be like, yo, we can overlook this stuff.
No, but it's clear Nolan was more interested in Oppenheimer than the politics.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of tells you that if you want to succeed, I don't know if it applies to today, but it might apply. But in the past, you had to kind of sell your soul.
Yeah.
To get what you wanted. And I think that's what Oppenheimer did, because in the movie, he was supporting like leftist movements. He was giving money to like people in Spain. He was doing all these contributions to various organizations, offering his room, his classroom for like protests or like some type of like environment that people can gather.
And he kept saying like, I'm not a part of all these groups. Like I just like learning about new ideas or something of that sort.
I think most people are, but it just tells you that you can't just have one foot in the door and one foot out. Sometimes people just want you to choose a side. And I think Oppenheimer, in the future where he kind of like hates what he did, he's also reflecting on like how many people he like alienated or ignored to just get his goal across. And when he was able to achieve his goal, it was completely out of his control afterwards.
Well, I think one of the most powerful scenes in this movie, you could say, is something to do with that, where he rides up on the horse and sees the flyer about them all gathering to talk about like the actual damages of what they've done, and he walks in and they don't really stop talking immediately like he's walked in. Like he's truly there to listen and like hear their opinions, and I think that reflects the other parts where he's open to hearing everybody's actual thoughts about like what's going on.
Yeah, but then he goes like, fuck man, I spent all this time making this bomb happen. We need to make sure this thing works.
Yeah. And
it's just sad, but the person that was leading that conversation when he walks in was a woman. Was a woman, which at that time, you know, women did not have a lot of places, and you had women in scientific labs or universities at that time. You hear that they said like the only job I can get is like a secretary, which is kind of like very insulting, where you may be like this, I don't know, astrophysicist or like chemist or biologist, and they're like, all you can do is be a typist.
Well, that woman was a scientist, and one of my favorite lines in the movie, and the only really women represented line we get in the movie, is when they were like, oh, you shouldn't be working on this, it's plutonium or what, it's uranium, or like we don't know what it'll do to like your genitals. She's like, well, yours are more exposed than mine, like what are we talking about here?
That's a great line, and people forget all this though. It's not like you're bulletproof, man. Which I want to pivot to the question is the role of women. There's this great line where Oppenheimer meets his brother's girlfriend, Jackie, and he's like, hi, this is so-and-so, still Jackie, which like, oh, you're not the fiance, you're not the wife, you're not anything, you're still Jackie.
Still just Jackie.
How do you feel the representation of women was taken in this movie?
Horrendous. And if you weren't going to bring this up, I was going to.
Good.
Horrendous, dog. Like, okay, so I have not seen all of Christopher Nolan's movies. I have heard in general he has a problem with women. I'm not going to go into this movie about Oppenheimer and expect a woman-led story, expect heavily female characters. That's not what it's That's not what it is, and that's totally fine, and that's totally great. The Florence Pugh situation in particular, I think was truly horrendous.
Really?
Horrendous. I think Emily Blunt is one of the greatest actresses we have, and I think she played such a main role in his life and had such little to do until the very, very end. I don't really know about that either. I did not appreciate it.
I see your point.
Yeah.
As a dude, Florence Pugh is...
Here's the problem with the Florence Pugh scene. Here's the problem. I went home and I Googled, like, how important this woman was in his life. Truly important.
Really?
Like,
I did not.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It said a lot of, like, his thinkings on things and, like, why he questioned some stuff, and she was a therapist, and, like, all these things.
And he was in therapy. Like, he mentions he was getting help in the beginning of the movie.
Yes, so this is, like, an important woman who plays his life. And, like, later in the movie, it is reflected that, like, what happens to her, like, truly affects him and all this stuff. They meet. They are immediately fucking. That's what she gets. I didn't need that.
But this is my question to you. You're Florence Pugh, if I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, or Emily Blunt. You're reading the script. Why do you sign up?
Because it's Christopher Nolan.
Well, again, but they
knew what they were doing. That's not the problem.
Okay.
I just think that like Christopher Nolan doesn't know how to write a woman in a film.
I can definitely say from all the criticism that he said, he made a pretty banger sex scene though. Very good sex scene. I'm just saying, because people were like saying,
I thought it was a really cringy sex scene, dog. She gets up mid-fuck to go look at his bookshelf. Like, what is going on?
No, we all agree with that. But I just think her as an actress, the seduction and the role she played was fantastic. And I think there's
Florence Pugh is great in everything. I'm not doubting Florence Pugh's skills.
But
you can put her in anything for how long, how short, she's gonna do great.
We were concerned with Mr. Christopher Nolan, Mr. like Robot Man, how he was gonna present. But that's when you have great talent. When you have great talent, you can give them like 2 lines and they can just kill it. Just like Cillian Murphy, he can just look at you and display every emotion. But I would have to say, for the time and era where this movie is taking place, women did not have a strong voice, if I'm not mistaken. And women were kind of like, you're a wife, you know, like if you, whether you go to university, congratulations, you have to like have.
There's that great line about Emily Blunt where she herself, her character was a biologist and a scientist and worked all the years, and he was like, oh, I heard you're a scientist yourself, and she said, well, I've upgraded to housewife, like not thrilled about that.
But I feel like anytime anyone was given a role, especially the women, like they stole the scene. Like that line itself was such a amazing.
But here's the thing, that was her best line in the whole movie.
No, I take it. I got another line for you.
Okay.
When Oppenheimer's coming back and he's gotten like his clearance or something, like he's like there to celebrate some type of moment, she's sitting there drunk and like looks at him, and Oppenheimer's all like, you have to go to him. And like she goes like, I've been going to that child all day. I've been servicing him all day. Yeah. It's like, what about me? Like this woman's all like, you know, I was a woman first. I was an individual first before I became a mother. I want some recognition. I want some attention. I want some loving right now, you know? Yeah. Where this guy is out there dicking around with goodness.
In his mind, her role is to tend to the child, because that's what men thought of those days.
But I think everyone's role, whatever it is, and people can talk about it as much as they want. I think whatever line they were given killer lines, regardless of the small moments.
Oh, it's a great script.
Yeah. And even the moments where Emily Blunt...
Again, I was not going into this movie like, I'd love to see some women represented. It's just like what I did get. I was like, okay, that seems about right.
I agree. Like, it's like a dude movie. It's like the Avengers of the males coming together with their great brilliance and like, oh, we're gonna make this bomb. But there was moments too where Emily Blunt is having that conversation where she is put like kind of on trial. Yes. And that kind of reminds me of My Cousin Vinny, where Marissa Tomei won an Oscar, where that guy's trying to cross-examine him, and he's like the best lawyer in town. They're like, oh shit, you got that guy being your cross-examiner, and he just totally destroys that dude. And what I liked...
She's awesome in that scene.
What I liked about that scene is like, I think she sees her husband being tortured and punished, and he's already like being tortured himself because he feel like, I fucked up the world, you know? And he's all like, I'm not gonna let you destroy this man anymore further. Like, you think you're gonna destroy this man? Is like, I'm gonna protect him.
Well, yeah, the whole time she's like strong in his defense, and it's like, why are you not fighting these people? Like, why are you not standing up for yourself? And particularly when they ask her, like, they're all like, do you even want her to speak for you? And he's like, you don't know our relationship like I do. Like, we've been through like hell together, and she will stand by my side.
And that speaks volumes about people and their relationships. And this is a woman that's gone through more than one divorce. Yeah. And she's been through a lot in her life. And I felt like she's such a strong character. I feel like she's even a stronger character than Oppenheimer, because this dude is just like a mess right now, and she's keeping this guy together. Yeah. Because at that point in his life, he's not that like charismatic superstar anymore. He's like this soul that's been like sucked out. He's like, God, I am really death. I ruined the world. That's how he feels. Yeah. And if it wasn't for his wife sticking up for him, and if she like fucked him over, like this guy might have just killed himself or something terrible. But with that said, what happens to stars when they die? Which big star died into the void of this film?
What do you mean by that? Like,
so like you've casted these amazing actors and stuff like that. Yeah. Was there an actor that you felt that did not fill their space in the movie?
Oh, interesting, because I actually thought that this movie was very, like, the casting was so interesting that, like, some people only have such small roles, but I thought everybody did really, really great in their role. There wasn't anybody that I was like, dropped the ball in my mind. Did you have someone on your mind?
Yeah, Rami Malek, which I think is just terrible.
Oh, are you kidding?
Yes, I just think he's a terrible actor.
No, what?
Yes, I don't care. He's won an Oscar. I liked him in, like, Mr. Robot, but he just has like one character he can play. That's it. I like, even in the Bond movie, he was like he was terrible. He's probably one of the worst Bond villains, and was probably like one of the best Bond villains to play. But when he was in every scene, I'm like,
so for me, he showed up and he had such a minor role. I was like, I mean, they got Rami Malek. They didn't get a background actor to just stand here with a clipboard.
Best actor.
So I was like, he's definitely going to show up and be something important later. Like, I knew that when he first came on the screen. And I thought when he sat down and gave the speech, I thought that was incredible.
No, I just didn't like him.
Okay,
I'm like, this is the guy that's gonna be doing the speech, and a great turn because no one saw it coming.
Yeah,
and I think that's another. My hat's off to Christopher Nolan, because you didn't expect these things, and he's always laying these breadcrumbs in his movies, and it's interesting that he made Iron Man the bad guy. He made the most loved character. Like, maybe in the past 15 years, personality and stuff like that. Everyone loves Iron Man.
Yeah.
But he made Iron Man the bad guy. So I thought that was just a really interesting turn. But Rami Malek, for me, was like the one actor that I thought to myself, like, dude, please show some range.
That's interesting, man. Well, I thought his range was appropriate for the film.
No, for me, it just wasn't enough. And just his conversation, anytime he talked, it was just very cringy to me. I don't know, but jeez. Anyhow, there are geniuses all over this movie.
Yeah,
and it's very interesting how geniuses, for their brilliances, get a pass. How did you feel like when all of these people, because they're so smart, get to basically just like fuck around and like do horrible things and make horrible things? That kind of very much applies to today when anybody kind of creates something. Like when Steve Jobs created, or he didn't create it, but is very similar. I don't want to say similar to Oppenheimer. He was the organizer of the iPhone. Mark Zuckerberg pretty much helped create Facebook because he did coding, stuff like that. AI, ChatGPT, whoever Google's making it. Creations are being made and put into society that are having devastating effects without anybody realizing it. It's just, for me, just kind of a tale of like what happened in the past is still being mirrored today.
Yeah.
Do you like see any like weird like wake up calls that we were like, hey, maybe this is a warning video for like brilliant people. Maybe we should put these people on check.
I mean, it's clear that Oppenheimer is not a stable man.
Yes.
That's clear from the start. It's clear from the poisoning apple. And it's clear that nobody really cares about that because of his brain. And I think that remains till this day. I mean, people just want the creation out of them. They want the product,
yes,
so they can abuse the product.
Yeah.
But someone first has to create the product.
And that's the problem that I constantly see every single day when we are making these things. They're coming out to society. Like, TikTok came out. I heard about it, and it's like people are spending hours on TikTok.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that's not destructive? But to me, it's like, I'm just very fortunate that no bomb has been dropped. But I think people just need...
2 bombs have been dropped.
Well, two terrible.
Technically 3.
Yeah. What's the third?
The Trinity.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was just a test.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just want people to, like, when we watch movies, to, like, use these as an example. Is like, man, we got to be careful with what we're creating.
Yeah.
We're not creating, like, spaceships to travel the world, or we're not trying to create, like, endless energy. We're constantly figuring out ways to blow each other up, to control each other, to consume constant products, to forget, like, what's going on in society, various distractions. I mean, everybody for years during the Cold War was worried, terrified that the bomb's gonna drop. And when I just watched this movie, it's like, I hope people, like, get a wake-up call. I'm like, be careful what you're creating out there.
Yeah. Because
it can just not have effects right now, but generational effects. There's this great line in the movie where Robert Oppenheimer tells his brother, if you're happy, I'm happy.
No, his brother says that to him.
Does his brother say this to him?
Yeah.
I thought Oppenheimer. Okay, anyhow.
No, it's when he's getting his award finally, right?
No, they're in the tent. They're in the tent together.
Oh, well, then the brother says it to him again in the end.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, when he's getting the award.
Yeah.
And just mirrors. What made you happy about this movie?
What made me happy about this movie?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the filmmaking made me happy about this movie. I think it's truly a masterclass in not only editing, acting, but sound design. The sound design in this movie was by far my favorite thing. I think it... How'd you see this? Did you see an IMAX screening?
No, I did not. I saw it in IMAX, but it was in Burbank, but not like the 70 super qualified. I think the only one near us is in...
Yeah, only 2 screens were showing it in
Universal Studios.
Universal
it is really,
and the Chinese.
It's really hard to get a viewing of it. But this entire... Go.
Sorry. So when I saw it the first time, I saw the 70 millimeter at the Chinese.
Oh.
I bought my tickets a little bit late, so we were a little bit closer than I wanted to.
Okay.
Every single time a bomb went off, like even like the mine bombs in the beginning and all this stuff, you could feel it.
Exactly.
Like feel it rattle through you to a point where it was overwhelming. And when the actual bomb went off, it like almost hurts the amount of sound, because I was also like to the side, so I was like right in front of the speaker. It was intense. And obviously it's created that way. I mean, the score, the way it flows through it, all of the rattles and the stomps that appear in the beginning that you don't really know are revealed until later, where it's that room with all the stomps, where that like preceded in like the score and the sound design throughout the whole thing. I thought it was incredible. The second time I saw it, I was like, I want to see this again. I looked at tickets. Obviously, it's sold out everywhere. And so I just had to go to a regular, like, just digital AMC screening, like, no film, no IMAX. And I was able to watch it just, like...
Normal folk.
And I don't want to say it was lessened, because it was... But it was almost better because it wasn't as intense. Like, the intensity helped it, but it also was, like, hard to look at it prospectively because you were, like, in it. You were involved in it. But that's not a critique. That is a pro of this. That the sound design is immaculate.
For me, I love this movie from beginning to end. I wish there was 50 hours of more movies like this. I hope it allows...
Did you think it was too long?
No, I did not think it was too long. I could watch 50 hours of this. I thought
it was 45 minutes too long.
I get it. Some people did not like the third act. Some people just wanted to see the end when the bomb breaks and stuff like that.
And I have to say, on the second watch, I thought it went much faster than the first time. But for me, after the bomb went off and we lost the race for time and the assembling team aspect of it, it definitely slowed down for me. But that was because I didn't know where it was going. And at that point, I checked my phone to see the time. And when I saw that there was an hour left of this movie, I was like, oh my God. What's gonna happen? And then when I realized it was just the men in the room talking, I was like, it really dragged for me. But the second time I watched it, since I expected that, I thought it cooked all the way through.
When you know what sometimes happens in a movie, it allows you to like take a seat back and relax and really just enjoy the movie. And for me, I just loved every part of this movie. My boy Rob tells me like, oh man, you can't hear the audio is like blasting when sometimes they're having dialogue, which is known for Christopher Nolan movies.
I didn't actually that.
I didn't think it. So Rob, this is 2 people telling you right now as you're listening. That wasn't happening, or maybe we totally missed it and we were just kind of in love.
I mean, the score is definitely like it swells through it where it is like overwhelming at a point, but I didn't think it drowned out the dialogue. I thought it was just a choice in the sound.
I think it just went along with the dialogue, and I think Christopher Nolan has learned his lessons from all of his movies. And just like how Asteroid City was a combination of all of Wes Anderson's movies, this was also a culmination of all of Christopher Nolan's movies. And I loved every part of it, whether it was black and white, which like reflects like Memento, time travel, back and forth, fast editing, action, great just like dialogue. Christopher Nolan has like some of his movies have like out of nowhere, they have like these great one-liners where it's kind of funny as well too. And when you watch the trailer, there's a trailer where Matt Damon's all like, this is the most fucking important thing you're going to do.
Yeah.
But when you watch the movie, it's a great fucking line. Like, you laugh at it.
I honestly think out of all the actors in this movie, Cillian Murphy and Matt Damon had the best chemistry.
Yeah.
I thought when the 2 of them were on screen, I was like, let's fucking go.
They're like bros. They feel like they can just continue talking to each other and just laugh. And it's just a good old time. But, I mean, come on. Like, it was aesthetically beautiful. The best actors in the world all raised their hands like, yes, put me in the movie, whatever. There was this one dude that took like $55,000. He's in The Boys. I forget his name. He's Dennis Quaid's son. Anyways, he took
Jack Quaid, yeah.
Yeah, he took $55,000. He's like, just put me in the movie.
And he gets to hold up some bongos at one point. What a king.
But like everything about this.
They have that great scene where he sits in the car with the other guy. and they're just like, oh, the glass will block us from the shield, and then Benny Safdie in his sunglasses and his sunscreen is like, yeah, but it's not gonna block the glass, and it just looks like they're delighted to be there.
I mean, I think everyone's just having such a great time making this movie, and
except for Cillian Murphy. I don't think he had a great time making this movie. I think he was.
He didn't actually eat dinner with the cast because he was on such a ridiculous diet. And tip my hat to this dude's gonna get any movie he wants now. Any movie. He just has to reject offers now.
Yeah.
But this movie was brilliant, man. Anybody who hasn't seen this, just watch it. It's really just beautifully done, very thoughtful. I don't think Christopher Nolan like wasted anything on this movie. It was really just like a love letter. And just from like all the actors that were in it, there were so many important parts. There's that line that Josh Hartnett tells Cillian or Oppenheimer is like, you're actually important. Now, I don't know if that's a reference to like him as Oppie, or is Christopher Nolan kind of telling his critics like, you know, I'm
important.
I'm
just
really...
like the people are reading like all of his movies are about a tortured genius, and is that just Christopher Nolan telling people he's a tortured genius?
Yeah, or something like that. But who is the most important person for you in this movie?
The most important person?
Yes, like the actor, like who it's like you were.
As much as Cillian Murphy, like his performance is incredible, and I don't think should be understated. I think RDJ's performance is the one that I was floored by. Because I mean, when's the last time RDJ did a serious role?
I can't think of it. He was like Iron Man for 15 years.
15 years, and he did like Dr. Dolittle or something in between. Like he's been like, but he's such a talented actor, and I feel like he doesn't take a lot of opportunities where it's a human story, where it's serious, and even where he gets to play like a sinister man. And I thought that every choice he made in his deliveries and in his facial expressions really were playing into what it was. And I feel like Cillian Murphy's performance, I mean, it's a very quiet performance, and I feel like people don't really credit those as how hard they are to actually like portray. And I think he did phenomenal and did all the things, but for me, RDJ won the movie.
I agree with you, but I really want to say my MVP and the person that, look, RDJ and Cillian are just, you know, they're
legends.
They're just, give them.
They're on a different level, yeah.
But I thought someone that came out of nowhere for me was Josh Hartnett. Okay. And I thought Josh Hartnett, every time he came into the scene, like he stole that moment.
You wanted to root for him, and it's like, I don't even know why.
I mean, he was just like the most like normal person that was like a physicist. Everybody seemed kind of like crazy, but this was like the most practical person in the entire group. And I just have to say, with him being the most practical person in the group, Oppenheimer seems to be kind of like not the most practical person. Like, why would you choose this person that would like be very unstable to lead your team?
Well, there's that great scene in the beginning of the movie where Matt Damon comes to him and basically tells him all the reasons why he should not be in charge of this team. And then he pretty much throws it back in his face, but you're still here. And he does the great thing he does to RDJ too, where he's like, well, I'm considering the role, even though it hasn't been like given to him. And it's pretty much fueling his ego of like why he's like actually the only person who can do it, after literally all of the facts are pointing against to him, because he thinks that way is the reason that he's able to do it.
Ego, man. Ego is very strong. But it's interesting how that dies away. Music. Loved it.
Oh my God, the score is incredible.
Yes.
Incredible. The score and the sound design, again, I'm telling you, that's the MVP of this movie for me. And the editing.
Yeah, I think people really, in the past, were very critical on Christopher Nolan on his, like, Interstellar is a great soundtrack. Dark Knight has history. I think this is going to be one of those soundtracks that's going to be on, like, Reels or TikToks that are just going to be a background on, like, some epic, like, conversational starter. But tip your hat to, like, whoever wrote this. I think his name starts with an L. He did the music, I think, for Tenet, too. But, but this top-notch. Rewatchable?
Oh, for sure. Like I said, I enjoyed it better on the second watch than I did the first, because I think those things being planted. Well, the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to watch that again. Like, that was overwhelming. I feel stressed. I am anxious. That was depressing. Like, that was intense. And then I was like, actually, I'm going to go run that back. And I enjoyed it more on the second watch, and I probably now will watch it again. So I do think it's actually rewatchable.
Yeah, I think it's definitely rewatchable. I think it's his best movie. I think it's just going to be one of those moments where, you know, when they have, like, a festival, or, like, you know, they do Quentin Tarantino's, like, 9 movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I guarantee there's going to be a moment where there's going to be, like, a Christopher Nolan festival of, like, his movies, and everybody sits there and watches it. Or, like, when his next movie comes out, they're all going to, like, every week release, like, one of his old movies, Memento, The Dark Knight, whatever you can think of.
But like in theaters? That would be sick.
I mean, they do that sometimes, or like it's like the 10th anniversary. Anything shock you from this movie? Anything that you weren't expecting, like you were kind of blown away?
Yes. Okay. So, the Florence Pugh suicide scene.
Oh. When
I saw it the first time, I was like, she didn't kill herself. Someone is...
Yes, the glove.
Yes. I was like, but then it was like revealed for the rest of the movie, because I was like, okay, maybe I just made that up. Maybe she was just totally hurt. And then when I saw it the second time, I was like, no, the glove is there.
Yes.
It is there. And yes. I did some Googling, and it is, like, that woman actually did kill herself, and it was suspected that maybe the U.S. government killed her to...
So many people.
Yeah.
The FBI.
So that was the one thing, because when I saw it the first time, I was like, maybe I just, like, made that up. Like, I don't think that actually happened. Maybe I was just like, oh, I saw something wrong, but that's not the way. So that was shocking to me. I was like, oh, that's... In the way that it's only there for, like, a couple frames, I just thought it was so beautifully done, because you don't really know.
Mm-hmm. I was just very shocked that Robert Downey Jr. was the bad guy. Or he played the bad guy. And it was just... It's so weak of human beings to just think like something's all about them when it had nothing to do with that. And let that be a lesson for people listening. Sometimes you might see two people talking and you might think it's about you. Maybe it's in the workplace, you don't get a promotion. Maybe it has nothing to do about yourself. Please do not try to like destroy the world or something like that, or destroy a person's life.
The other thing that shocked me was the scene where they're all in the room and the stuff about Florence Pugh comes into action.
Oh, wow.
And there's the great cut between where it's just like panning of him, and then it cuts behind the guy's head, and then it reveals them just like naked on the chair. So I had a friend who saw this movie, and she asked, when I saw this movie, did everybody in my theater erupt in laughter during that? And I was like, oh my God, no. Are you kidding? That was such a serious moment. She said my entire theater erupted in laughter.
That's the reason, because I think there's a lot of fanboys that look at like Christopher Nolan, that he can't really like make love scenes or like portray women in a certain way. And I just think there's two groups that you're gonna run into. People are like, oh fuck, this is serious.
When
like
that happened, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, the psychological like implications, because you notice that Emily Blunt is probably looking down the entire time.
And then she looks up during
Then she looks up and looks at him. It's like, yo, I'm fucking your man.
Yeah.
And like, they're putting your dirty laundry, and you don't know
into history.
Into history. And like, how is this going to be viewed for years to come? And I don't know if this was like, at the time, going to be like a secret held trial that was never going to be released, like some FBI file. Or it was just going to be like what we see it today. And imagine like,
well, clearly it's been released.
Yes, and in a movie form. Movie too long? Or just right?
I think it's a little bit too long.
Okay.
The first time I was like, it is literally an hour too long.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything that's in there is important. I think some of the trial stuff honestly could have been cut down, and it wouldn't have diminished it. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit too long, but I don't think it's harming it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's just right. I can't imagine removing any part of the movie. But that's me as like a history lover, and I'm like, please, why can't there be more history movies like this? Make it smart. I know it's a movie about men just talking in rooms, but it's so well done that you can't even like, it doesn't, you're moved, you're engaged, action, your attention is drawn to it. And it's really just gonna make Cillian Murphy get like any role he wants, and he's probably gonna get all the praise. I can't imagine any other actor being this role.
Well, I mean,
who would you, if you could, would you be able to think that anybody else could play Oppenheimer's role after what you saw him do?
No, he crushed it so hard, I don't think. And he looks like Robert Oppenheimer. Have you seen pictures of him? He looks like him, and the type of performance that he gives, like, he was astonishing, and I don't think anybody else could have pulled it off without him, and I think if they had cast someone else, it would have harmed it because of how good he was in this movie. And, I mean, and there's so many people in this, even just think of all the white men who are in this movie doing a couple lines. Think of swapping any of them out into his part. It wouldn't work the same.
I know that it's a big week, or it's been like a gigantic event for Barbenheimer. How do you pronounce it?
Barbenheimer.
I wanted to get like a combination question, because I know we're going to be talking about that. Like, it's like your movie. I kind of view, and as how weak of the argument might be, when Barbie was created, it was used for something completely else. And when the bomb was made, it was used for something completely else. I kind of feel like these movies have a lot of parallels where it talks about men's society in life, women's society in life, and the world and how it's going forward. Do you feel the same?
I mean, definitely. There's complete opposite parallels drawn in each, which is interesting because they're coming out at the same time. But, I mean, yeah, it's very much like once the thing's been created, it runs with it, runs without you. And I think there are some differences in the movies where there are direct lines referencing it. And in Oppenheimer's case, like how horrendous we've become. And in Barbie's case, like what a world of endless possibilities. And I think it does draw an interesting parallel.
Yeah, to me, it just... I'm like, what was the timing, you know? Like, because...
And Barbie was released, like, right after this happened or something? Right before?
Because this movie, even though you knew what it was about, you didn't anticipate what it was at the end of the movie. Yeah. And I felt the same way about Barbie. And how they marketed it, both sides. I tip my hat to them. And I think Warner Brothers was trying to fuck over Christopher Nolan. But in the end... I think they both created a time in the world where everybody came together in a weird piece.
No, they helped each other. As much as it could have been like pinned against like, what are you going to see, this or that, it very much became like, you're going to see this and that, correct? And I think that both of these movies would have been incredibly successful no matter what, but I think the fact that the internet ran with the Barbenheimer thing and made it its own thing just improved the success of both. And I honestly think it helped Oppenheimer more than it helped Barbie.
You think so?
I think it helped both. I think it helped both tremendously.
I couldn't imagine a world where those two weren't running together at the same time.
They make absolutely no sense to be like partnered in any way because they are so different other than the fact that they come out on the same day and that they're both made by incredible filmmakers. And I think it's really, really interesting. I don't know if any other movie could ever pull this. I saw a lot of the parallels to be like the last time this happened was when The Dark Knight and Mamma Mia were released on the same day. But that wasn't like a... Was that a big societal thing?
No, but when people came out, like I had people at workplaces dressed in pink and still didn't watch the movie, but just did it for the release. Yeah. And everybody got to dress up. You know, I think that's so interesting. And I think marketers or the marketing staff really, I know there's a giant, like this is where you do marketing right. Like I think the Harvard case study and like doing marketing wrong is like Bud Light. But this is a case study in like, how you need to market to audiences and do it correctly. And we will look back on this moment very fondly. I think the only one that's really pissed off that this movie came out is Tom Cruise because everybody...
Poor Tom Cruise, man.
Everybody... I'm like, dude, you should have released the movie sooner. You kept showing us that jump. And now what happened? Barbie took over and you got to tip their hats out. Barbie. Juggernaut. Like, I think to date right now we're at $500 million.
Way higher than that. It's like 700 right now.
$700 million. Well, with the success of this movie, I can't wait till we talk about the success and the conversation to Barbie. Good night, everybody.